Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. Joining me today on the phones is Consumer Editor Jeremy Korzeniewski. How you doing, man?
I'm not too bad. Just a tiny little bit of snow accumulating on the ground out there, but not too bad for December.
Good weather to talk about an off-road pickup truck, perhaps, maybe like the Ram TRX, per se, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, if we get around to it.
Well, I mean, we might talk about this really hot Buick Enclave on here too. I don't know if there'll be time for the TRX. I'm kidding. We're going to lead off the Ram TRX. Jeremy had a great drive with this earlier this winter, fall, whatever kind of spot we're in right now as the seasons kind of change. Took it to an off-road park somewhat near his place down there in Ohio, which the pictures are great. Check out the full review. Obviously, it's on our site. Really great pictures. And it's obviously it's a good story. So check that out. Jeremy just got out of a BMW 5 Series. And we'll try to maybe get into a little bit on the Enclave too. I've always had an interesting soft spot maybe for the Enclave. I don't know. I've always just found it very interesting. That Lambda architecture is what they used to call the chassis for, the larger crossovers that General Motors developed way back when. And I've always found that the Enclave has actually been among the better ones. So we probably will get into that. We'll close things out with Requiem for the Alfa Romeo 4C. They're sending it out right with a very limited edition that recalls one of the great Alfas from days gone by. But let's get right into it. TRX, pretty awesome. You kind of got it right as the tail end of fall was winding down before, the weather got bad. But again, wouldn't matter for this thing. Just some initial thoughts. What did you think? I imagine you were pretty excited to get this. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be excited about a 700 something horsepower, lifted four-wheel drive monster truck thing. And it was exactly as exciting as you'd expect it to be. I subtitled my review of it, King of the Jurassic Parking Lot, which, it's like my clever little witty way of calling to attention the fact that it's called the TRX or T-Rex, whatever, what have you, because it competes against the Ford Raptor. So we've got these two trucks, dinosaur themed, dinosaur named, and as they are named, the TRX is the king of the off-road pickup trucks. It is faster, more capable than the Raptor. And I say that, understanding that we're nitpicking when it comes to picking an off-road winner, which one has better off-road performance between the TRX and the Raptor. They are both extraordinarily capable. I have jumped both of them, had four wheels off the ground multiple times in each truck. And I can say that buyers of either vehicle are going to be extremely happy with their purchase. So if you're a Raptor owner and it irritates you to hear someone like me saying that the TRX is the better vehicle, don't feel bad. The Raptor is awesome, amazing. You're not really losing anything other than a few tenths to 60 and a little bit extra burliness from the TRX. The vehicle itself, 700 horsepower, is a lot. And it feels like a lot, despite the fact that the TRX is stupidly heavy. I don't remember the last vehicle I've driven that feels as substantial, maybe all the way back to the Hummer H2 that everybody vilified because it was just so big and burly and unnecessarily so. The TRX is just as big and burly. You could say not unnecessarily though, because the thing is designed literally to take crazy off-road jumps at speeds that you would think are going to bend the frame up and end up in a ruined truck. Not going to happen. It is the beefiest, burliest thing. I crawled underneath it, looked at the suspension arms, looked at the frame. The frame rails of a regular Ram are pretty hefty, pretty big, burly things to be able to tow and do everything that you need a pickup truck to do. Well, the TRX is beefed up even more. I think they said something like 30% thicker steel. It's got, just like the Raptor, it has shocks that are specifically designed for the truck. In the case of the Raptor, that is Fox shocks. In the case of the Ram, that is Bilsteins or Bilsteins, however you want to say that. And they are epically good. The thing that shocked me the most about the truck, because I expected it to be an absolute off-road beast, and it was, so I wasn't shocked by that. But what was truly surprising was just how civilized it is in actual everyday driving. I think the added weight of the truck, there's the significance of its mass, and the size of the tires and pliableness of the tires, combined with those super specialized off-road shocks, allow it really just to, suck up anything that you hit on the road, whether you're just driving around town. And I live on a road that's a little bit bumpy. It's Ohio, so frost heaves, potholes, that kind of stuff. The TRX just eats that kind of stuff up. You don't even realize you're driving down a bumpy road. On the highway, just absolutely rock solid. That was the part that was truly surprising and shocking to me, is just how composed it is in everyday driving. And then, of course, what it's truly for is off-road. My brother-in-law owns a piece of property in Ohio, Northwest Ohio, and he was kind enough to open it up for me and let me go crazy on it. I built a kind of modified figure eight course that wound through some trees and then up and over a massive mound of dirt and mud and rocks. And I mean, the TRX just eats it up. It was super stable and fun at high speeds. You put it into Baja mode using its little electronic selector inside, and it turns traction control off, lets you slip as much as you want to. I was sliding the rear end all over the place. I even got one of the front tires up off the ground a little bit in some of the really hard turns. But it wasn't scary. Like, the thing is so planted. It never felt like I was out of control. Truly impressive. I think the most fun that I had with it was high speed, sliding it through the trees, not worrying about the bumps and ruts and anything that was in my way. And yeah, it's just an absolutely impressive beast of a machine. I'm curious to hear your take on like the kind of genre in general. And I think we have to touch on the excessiveness of the thing, and the fact that, the fuel economy is abysmal. Like, when you're having fun with it and really goosing it like that, you are easily in single digits. And the week that I had it, I think I averaged right around 12 miles per gallon, which is, not telling people what they can and can't buy, but I described it in a separate story. It's not an indictment of the truck necessarily, because it's just a consequence of what they're building. But you could call 12 miles per gallon irresponsible, and I don't think you'd be wrong. So thoughts?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm really glad Ram did this. FCA did this. I think it makes so much sense for them, because they, essentially what they're doing right now is marketing through horsepower, with the Hellcats and all the different sort of, V8s you could get across their lineup. So I think it made a ton of sense to put a motor like this. This is, I believe it's 702 horsepower,
Right.
V8 under the hood of the Ram. It's probably too much horsepower, like you said. 33-gallon tank, roughly, if I'm looking at these specs right. So, I mean, that's still a big tank, but I mean, even with the fuel economy that you're telling me about, it almost seems like you need to have like, I don't know, an extra can of gas with you if you ever got really far out there on the trail. I mean, from an aesthetic standpoint, I love how it looks. Big tires, bold grille. I actually think they did a good job of not making it look cartoonish. They kind of let the tires, those headlights, and then just that, the proportions, like those pronounced wheel arches to help out with articulations and things like that just do the talking. You know, they could have been more cartoonish, but I think it's fine. I mean, this isn't, you know, from a look standpoint, much farther afield than, say, the Ram Rebel. In some ways, it looks more like a Ram, partially because the Ram is probably the most styled up full-size pickup truck than, say, the Raptor does, which I think is a pretty big departure in a good way from the regular F-150. I like the regular F-150, but to me, the Raptor really distinguishes itself with its, you know, overt, kind of crazy looks. To me, the Ram's already kind of a little crazy. So when you dress it up like this, it's actually somewhat in line. I think it's really, I think the way FCA is using like existing platforms, existing vehicle lines to just power them up is a logical move, because we actually don't know a ton about what's coming next for, Fiat Chrysler, to be honest, beyond that they're merging, that's a fun word, that they're merging with Peugeot and that entire group. So honestly, we don't even know what's next for the Chrysler brand,
Right.
Like there's big unanswered questions. So, to me, it's like they're playing the cards that they're dealt, and they're playing them really well. You see this with like the Charger and the Challenger, old platforms, the LX platform or whatever they're calling it these days, that they just keep iterating on, keep adding more horsepower, and people still love the cars. The Challenger sales are still pretty strong. So yeah, I mean, I think, this is one where I didn't drive it. I would love to drive it. I cannot wait to get behind the wheel of one. I hope they get one, maybe this one, in the Detroit fleet in the winter, because I love to drive trucks like this in the winter. I love to drive trucks in the winter, period. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is a home run for them without having driven it. But I think just in premise and then execution, obvious play for them. Not only because of what the Ram is, but also because of like what FCA is as a company. So like, I could see how Honda might not go down this road.
Right.
Just it's not their business model. They don't have a full-size truck. So that makes some sense, but Fiat Chrysler already has like all those pieces sitting out there. Why not load them up on the Ram? So I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, you talked about your off-road course. How long did that take you to set up? Like, were you out there with like a shovel and like bales of hay? Like, I don't know, it just sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, I wasn't that concerned about the terrain that I was going to be driving over, because like I said, the truck is just so crazy and ridiculous. So really what I wanted to do with that course is be able to make it fast. You can climb, you can find something to climb just by, heading onto a dirt road and looking for stumps and fallen trees and that kind of thing. Like if you're trying to figure out how to test like articulation and rock crawling and that kind of stuff, there's ways to do it. What's really difficult to do is to mimic the kind of high-speed off-roading that a truck like this is made for. So that's really what I was tempted to do. So we walked it a little bit. We mapped out okay, the distance between these trees. You can slalom, and when I say trees, we're talking shrubs. Like I wasn't gonna start flying through a forest and risk airbags or anything that's like that. I mean like little trees that didn't come up to and you could see in the image gallery that we published in Autoblog, trees that didn't even come up to the top of the car. But we kind of used those as pylons or cones and weaved through them. I don't know, it was maybe an 1/8 mile kind of figure 8 course. And like I said, there was the big mound, and you could see the articulation shots in that too. I drove up as far as I could on the mound of dirt and still have all tires firmly on the ground. If I'd have gone up any further, we would have lost contact, which, locking differentials, all that kind of stuff, but it was to show articulation. So I mentioned it real briefly. I went ahead and pulled up on fueleconomy.gov. So the TRX is rated at 10 city, 14 highway, 12 combined. So 10, 14, 12. The Raptor is 15, 18, 16. So that is a significant difference, according to their calculator that they've got right here on fueleconomy.gov. On a Raptor, you'll spend $4,250 more over 5 years than average, $4,250. The TRX is $11,500 more in fuel per year, or excuse me, $11,500 more per over 5-year period compared to the average new car. So $4,250 for the Raptor, $11,500 for the TRX. I don't bring that up because I don't expect that TRX buyers are going to think that's a fair trade-off. They will. They're going to, 700 horsepower. That's absolutely ridiculous. It does 0 to 60 in something ridiculous like 4 seconds for, a crazy off-road vehicle with its capabilities. And I'm not throwing stones at FCA because this is, buyers are going to want this. They're going to, and I actually don't even think it's that outrageously priced. I think it's around $60,000 to start with, or is it? I should look that up, shouldn't I?
I'm seeing about 70, but
70 there.
That still seems entirely reasonable to me when you factor the motor plus all the off-road capability. In some ways, this is, I think, as good a value as a better value than some of the cars, to be honest, because those are just basically old sedans or 2-door Challengers with big motors in them. Yes, they could do some amazing things in a straight line, but how much horsepower do you need to go really fast in a straight line? This could take you over anything, which I think is pretty neat.
Yeah. So that's really, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, his big criticism is that it's inefficient, and that doesn't bother you, then the TRX is perfect for you. If you're hearing this and say, man, that sounds super awesome, but yeah, there is a part of me that really thinks that's wasteful, maybe consider the Raptor as a viable alternative. It's still bad gas mileage, but it's not quite as terrible as the TRX, and it is a little bit less expensive. I think all things considered, the TRX is worth it, but not to harp on it, but that super inefficient fuel efficiency, that bugs me. That's a legit issue with vehicles that are aimed at this demographic.
There's a part of me that really likes the Raptor too, because in these segments, I tend to like the original one. I might kind of sort of go for the second one, if you will, like Wrangler, Gladiator, then Bronco. In the case of Gladiator, I ended up kind of just being well, I do think I like the Wrangler better than I like the Gladiator. Mm-hmm. And same with Bronco. Bronco is amazing. Can't wait to drive it. Part of me still feels like after I drive them both, I might like the Wrangler better. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of to flip the coin, though, on FCA and Ford here. I'm almost feeling that's how I might be with the Raptor. Yes, it's less powerful. It's a little more fuel efficient. But there's something about the Raptor, about how they, it's a little cliche to say they invented this modern segment, but they kind of did. Back in was it 08, 09 when the Raptor launched? There weren't many things like this out there. The old hyper, really big powered Rams and the old F-150s. It had been a while since we had seen some of those. So to go down the road they did, in the middle of the Great Recession, if you will, I think is pretty cool. And to me, that grille, the looks, it has all the horsepower you need, to do whatever you want to do. You don't need a ton of horsepower off road. Sure, it's great for the Baja style crazy jumps and stuff you might want to do, and pre-running and all that. But even if you're a hardcore enthusiast, the Raptor is more than enough power, and the Ram is pretty great too. So I don't know. Not having driven them back to back, I think I might still stay with the Raptor, but I don't know. I could definitely be persuaded, if you will. So that's kind of how I'm handicapping the field.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. I don't really know. I wouldn't. I'm not really the target demographic for either one of these things. I'm not gonna go out and buy something absolutely insane like this. I'm kind of more the pragmatic car buyer myself, but I totally get it, and it's the most fun I've had in a vehicle this year. So yeah, it's absolutely awesome. It's a super impressive engineering feat, and hats off to FCA for building this thing, putting together the pieces, and giving buyers exactly what it is that they want.
Cool. Well, how about we move along to the BMW 5 Series, car that kind of holds a special place in my heart. My brother owned one for a while. He since has traded it in, moved up to a large SUV. But whenever it was like, hey man, you want to drive or something like that, like sure, absolutely. If I recall, it had some issues with those run flats and things like that. But I've always liked this sort of E-segment size car. To me, you get like a lot of car, but it still can be sporty if you want to. But I think it sort of wears the design elements of whatever brand, whether it's Mercedes or BMW or Audi, in this segment very well. The 3 Series is, of course, like the icon. But I've always liked how the 5 Series like drove, how it handled, the power you could get in it. It's certainly a more usable car for basically anybody. If you want a little bit more room in the back seat, the 5 Series, you start to get some pretty reasonable space. But what did you think? This is the refreshed one, if you will. What do you think?
Yeah, refreshed for 2021. I actually did the original, this current generation, which is what I think G30. Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, so I did the original drive on that. It was 17 or 18, and my opinion on the new one hasn't changed dramatically. We're still working on the write-up of this one. It'll be published probably by the time you're listening to this. So check the site for the full write-up. But preview of that, it's still a 5 Series. And I think a lot of enthusiasts, and present company not excluded in that, I fully put myself into this camp. We have such fond memories of 5 Series of the past. Most specifically, the E39 generation was just like, I don't know, a perfect car. Not perfect car, but perfect sports sedan, luxury sports sedan. You could still, at the time, get it with a 6-speed manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, perfect driving dynamics, a host of super smooth inline-6 engines, optional V8s. Styling was crisp and clean. It was sized right. You could fit 4 adults in it. What else do you want? And I think we still kind of have this hang-up of that's what we want a BMW 5 Series to be. And that's just it's not possible for BMW to reintroduce the E39. That's not the direction that the luxury sports sedan segment as a whole has gone to. So I don't think it's really fair to judge it on those grounds of, well, is it the ultimate driving machine? Well, I mean, it depends on how you're judging it. It is a better car now than it's ever been. The one that I'm testing is the 540i, which is a inline 6. It makes, here I got the numbers, it is 335 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter turbocharged inline 6. It does 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds when it's equipped with all-wheel drive, as mine is. And let's just take a moment to recognize that 4.6 seconds to 60 is really quick. It's not supercar quick, but it's supercar of 1995 quick. And who needs to accelerate from 0 to 60 faster than 4.6 seconds? And I can tell you from my week driving it that it does that with zero drama, extreme comfort, and it's such a great, solid car. Super smooth, super quiet. And it's those kinds of things that BMW has to provide, along with obviously safety and economy and all that kind of stuff. Where the line by which these vehicles are judged is so different in the year 2020 or 2021 than it was in those what we think of glory years. And cars just aren't the same anymore. They've got to be electrified, to the hilt, with steering that can control themselves, with every bit of traction control, with the world's best headlights. That's what modern luxury means these days, and the 5 Series nails it. Would I actually choose it? I still really like the E-Class. I really love what Mercedes is doing with their interiors right now. They're just such a classy look, and maybe more my style than the more austere look of the BMW. But I would not fault anyone for choosing a 540i. And the big difference, like the number one change in this 540i 2021 as opposed to 2020, is the addition of a new 48-volt mild hybrid system. It is completely unfelt by the driver. There's no hint that there's any sort of electronic wizardry going on. It is actually a kind of like what they used to refer to as the mild hybrid systems that GM used to do a lot. It is like a big alternator connected through a belt to the engine, to the crankshaft, unlike some other systems that put an electric motor directly into the transmission or by the output shaft, something like that. But kudos to BMW for excellent engineering. All you get out of it is better fuel efficiency and 0 gaps in power, because it is a turbo 3-liter. So, typically with a turbo, you'd feel a little bit of lag while it's building up. There's nothing like that at all in the 540i. The electric motor generator thing fills in any weak spots in the power curve. It doesn't actually boost overall output, but it fills in any gaps and makes just a completely flat power curve. Really well done by BMW.
Yeah, I think, the 5 Series is an interesting example of a car that, as like proportions and size of the segment has changed, the 5 Series is, had to evolve along with it. BMW has had to evolve and change. The 5 Series right now is relatively large compared to how it always was. It always was the bigger, obviously in between the 3 and the 7, but, now it's a good sized car. And I think for a lot of people, this is the car that they need versus, say, like a 7 Series, because you really, there's a big price difference, and there's really just a size difference, how the cars drive. To me, if you're like in between, you're looking at like 3, 5, or then pick one of those like Grand Coupes that tweens in between and confuses us all, that sort of thing. Does it sort of, how does it live up to the historic predecessors so many of us have come to know and love as enthusiasts? Well, that's tricky. But I guess if that's what you want, you should probably go buy a used one. Just looking around. I mean, hey, you can get a great deal on a BMW 5 Series here's one with 200,000 miles on it, 1995 525 for $1,200. Here's an 85 one for about 25,000. That looks more showroomy, but I've actually honestly thought about, because I've always liked the dynamics of BMWs, sort of their understated looks. I've thought about getting like an older 3 Series, 20 years old, somewhere in there, older 5 Series, 20, 25 years old, just to like have as a weekend car or something. Haven't quite done that yet, but to me, that's where you sort of go back to the legend. And then right now, I think, some of the refinements and enhancements, and it's a bigger car, and like, changing up the powertrain, the way they have, it's what they have to do. Mercedes is doing the same things. I'd give the edge to the E-Class in this segment, even though I really like, just like I said, the vibe of a BMW. Everything from the steering to the looks, and so on. But just I think the Mercedes interiors right now are a little bit better. I think they affect a very elegant look, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you got to throw the A6 in there as well.
Yeah, that's a really good car too.
Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with any of them. I can tell you that the BMW it drives excellent. You can't poke anything at it other than the fact that it's not an E39. Like those cars had such lively steering, and they really made you feel like you were part of it. And now you're much more isolated, and it is a little bit more numb than those classic 5 Series. But like you were alluding to, it's over $60,000. My test vehicle was over 60. I think it was around 65, maybe even. And that's a lot of money. Like if you really want a sweet old E39, you could probably get a really great one and bank $25,000, $30,000 for inevitable maintenance and all that. And you'd still be under the cost of this. So, and let's talk about what you won't get. You won't get a car that can semi-autonomously steer itself, speed up and slow down with traffic. Have these amazing safety features, and the crash test results aren't going to be as good. Like all that kind of stuff is those are realistic reasons why new cars aren't the same as old cars. It's not going to park itself like the new one does. It's not going to have these sweet infotainment systems that we all know and love. And so anyway, I feel like we're kind of going down a weird path with that. Getting back to just the 2021 5 Series, it's better than the car that it replaced. It's, realistically speaking, it's the best 5 Series BMW's ever made. The number one thing after getting out of it, after driving a while, is this: it's very relaxing. Like, you feel good when you get out of it. You're like, okay, that was a really nice way to get from A to B.
Sounds good. Well said. Think we can leave it there. I think you kind of summed it up neatly right there. Let's just briefly touch on the Enclave. Is there anything new with the Enclave? I guess let me start off with that. Or were we driving this more for comparison's sake? I guess remind me what's new with the Enclave, if anything.
It's pretty much the same. There's some mild differences, but nothing that anyone's going to rush out and get the new model year over the previous one. But driving it was a reminder of I don't know, the Enclave. I think it's the best looking of GM's large 3-row crossovers. It's certainly the most isolated. I mentioned in the 5 Series when we were about the 5 Series, we were talking about that it's smooth, serene, and quiet. Those adjectives apply very much to the Enclave, especially the high-end, and I don't even know how you say it, Avenir. However you say it.
Yeah.
Avenir,
they borrowed that concept car name from 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
It's just an absolute quiet, comfortable, serene vehicle to spend time in. You could stay boring if you wanted, and I think that's the point. Like, it's supposed to be smooth, quiet, comfortable above all else, and that's exactly what it is. It's isolated from the road. It doesn't wallow like a 70s Cadillac or anything like that. That's not the point. It's calm and composed. But yeah, like put your family in that, drive to dinner. It is not a driver's car. It's not trying to be, and it nails its demographic.
Cool. You had the 3.6 liter, I might imagine, under the hood?
I did, yeah, the 3.6 all-wheel drive. Buick does some funny things though. Like if I'm gonna pick on the vehicle a little bit, still a lot of buttons inside Buicks. They haven't really switched over to a touch-heavy interior system, and I think in general that's good for Buick. They do have I'm not here to say that older buyers can't figure out modern infotainment systems. I don't think that that's the case at all. But do they want it? Do they want a very tech-centric driving experience? Probably not. But if I had to point fingers at it, I would say that the interior buttons and knobs and switches are kind of lackadaisical. They're a little, they're just bland. It's like black plastic with white labeling, and it's tactile. It works, but I don't think for a vehicle that's if they want to start comparing themselves with Acura and Infiniti and Lexus, which is kind of like their running mates in the segment, I don't think their switchgear is up to snuff. And I don't want to harp on it because it's the kind of thing that I think we as journalists really pick on, much more so than the actual buyers do. But if I'm buying a Buick and spending that much on an Enclave, I don't really want the sea of black plastic buttons that I'd expect to find in a Sonic.
Yeah, I think that's entirely reasonable. I think it's showing a little bit of awareness, knowing that Buick is trying to skew younger, but I mean their demographic is still a little bit older. So I mean it's probably a smart move, a savvy play, just to keep it simple with the knobs and the buttons. Also, I mean they haven't really redesigned that interior in quite some time, so maybe it will move a little more tech-centric going forward. I have generally liked the Enclave as far as the looks department. Like you, I think it might be the best looking of the three General Motors like large crossovers. The Acadia in certain trims I think could look pretty good after they redesigned it and gave it some new headlights. It's a very light refresh, but it does look a little better, a little more like tougher, especially in AT4 trim. But still, overall, the Enclave, especially when you dress it up in Avenir trim, is pretty good looking. I mean, plus there's so many Buick and Lexus and everybody else commercials on right now. Cars like this feel like the thing to drive this time of year. So, these vehicles make a lot of sense. We've been talking a lot about on the site, on the podcast, just in general about the Suburban, which I drove recently, the Tahoe, which Joel and James have been in recently. You don't necessarily need like large body on frame vehicles like that for everybody. These things are still huge too. That's the other point. For a while there, it was like, these three-row crossovers were really getting up there with like the Tahoe, just as far as like sheer size. But, you got the unibody construction, you got, like a little more of a on-road friendly all-wheel drive system, that sort of thing. Anyways, I'd agree with you. I think it's probably the best looking of the GM like triplets, if you will. I'm old enough that I remember when there wasn't a Chevy version initially, but there was like a Saturn version. In fact, I think the Outlook may have been the first one to launch. But I'm dating myself. And then when they did a redesign of the Acadia, like probably 10 years ago, it looked a lot like the Outlook. If you do some funny Googling, you can see the like separated at birth that there's like a 20-something Acadia that looks a lot like the Outlook from like the year prior or something.
I remember that as well. I think kind of what they did was they took the Outlook that was going away and basically, I don't want to say rebadged it because I don't think it was quite that simple, but basically made that into the more upscale GMC version. At the time though, I've always thought that the Enclave was the best looking of those big three-row crossovers, and I think that stands to this day. It's just more. It's more styled. It's got kind of swooping curves to it, and Buick's kind of chrome grille works on a vehicle of this size, and the kind of the swoopy lines of current Buicks work on. They translate well to this size vehicle, and I think that's still true. It's classy. I think the Enclave inside and out is just a classy, well-designed vehicle. I mean, I don't think that the Enclave is really going to bring a lot of young buyers into Buick showrooms. But the buyers who are purposely choosing it, I think they're probably doing so because it is, I don't know, kind of like that throwback, non-overly techy driving experience. They probably want that.
They make a ton of money off of them too. I mean, it's a large SUV in a segment where people need vehicles like this. Some people are just always going to skew domestic. You got to have something there. So I think it's a pretty well executed product for Buick, and they've often talked about how like they haven't changed it a ton over the years. Like again, to go back, we're really flashing back here 10 years ago, but this was the Enclave was better than the other GM versions of this vehicle. It was better looking. It was the first one. It was stylish. I believe it won a bunch of awards. So it's at this point, it's more kind of soldiering on. It probably could use a good interior upgrade to get back to like, because when it launched, it did feel pretty special and premium. So I think that's a lot of Buick talk, maybe. Yeah,
second best selling Buick.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
There you go. Well, let's talk about something that is pretty slow selling, the Alfa Romeo 4C. I got this press release, and I was pretty intrigued because it's like they're going to send out the 4C with this Tributo, if you will, special edition that salutes one of the great Alfas back from 1967, and it's also kind of the swan song, if you will, the farewell for the 4C, which, to be perfectly honest, I thought they killed this car off like 2 or 3 years ago. I forgot completely that it was still technically a new car you could drive. So yeah, check out the story on our site. It's a nice, special edition if you're a really like hardcore Alfisti, I think is the right word. You might want to pick one of these up if you could get your hands on one. But that's about it. For me, the broader play is like, oh, hey, the 4C is still here, and there it goes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think about the 4C? Just, kind of riff here.
Well, they did kill the coupe off a few years back. They only kept the Spider. So I think maybe the last 2 years it's just been Spider, something like that. And there won't be a 2021. It's officially going away after 2020. And the one that they're building here, it's called the 4C Spider Stradale Tributo. And if you are an Italian out there who speaks Italian, my apologies. I'm sure that I butchered that terribly. But anyway.
Sounds all right to me, and I'm half Italian, so.
The 33 Stradale Tributo. It's a pretty cool swan song. Take a look at the photo gallery on Autoblog.com. They kind of put a red tint on the exposed carbon fiber that you see inside the interior of the Stradale Tributo. It is very pretty. I haven't seen it in person. I'm only looking at photos, but I've seen kind of this tinted composite, these tinted composites before, and I always think they look pretty cool. And what they do is they tint the kind of epoxy resin that holds all those wound carbon fibers together. So they end up with kind of like a interesting looking black and red kind of snakeskin pattern. Almost.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet looking.
Yeah, and since it's viewable from inside, I think that's like an especially cool way for them to set this vehicle apart as opposed to the standard kind of clear and black, clear coated look. So that's cool. They did make one mistake though. They parked it next to the old Stradale that is just absolutely gorgeous. You'll see it in the photo galleries that accompany the press release and the story on Autoblog. I mean, the new one looks really, really cool. I've always liked the look of the 4C, but take a look at the 1967 33 Stradale that they parked next to, and that thing stands out as an absolutely gorgeous machine. Can you see that now, Greg?
Yeah, I think it looks great. I think, I'm pretty sure I've seen that car. I imagine since they did a photo shoot with it, it's probably the same car they rolled out at the LA Auto Show a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
They did this, Alfa didn't have a ton of news at the point, so they're basically their floor display was outside the LA convention center, and it was just this big almost tent with an expedition of great Alfas. And I remember going out there on the second day of the show, and there wasn't a ton of news, and just drinking espressos and looking at the cars because they were so sweet. And I'm pretty sure this is one. To me, the old one harks back to that great 60s, a little early 70s look of those race cars that are curvy, but they've got those big wheels. I mean, it's just gorgeous cars. Love that style, love everything about it. I think you got to give some credit to the 4C though too, as far as just the fact that this was the car that brought Alfa Romeo back to America. I don't really count the 8C because they sold 50 of them or something.
Yeah, very few. Yeah,
and that was a beautiful car too. But I guess in some ways, to your point, it's tough to live up to the legend. We talked about that with the 5 Series, and when you look at that beautiful car from '67, you kind of got to look to really see the parallels. And to be fair, Alfa's not really saying that. And there are some, especially if you look maybe door forward, the way they set up the shot, you can see it. But I've also always kind of thought the 4C, I don't know, it looked more like a Lotus than it did what I would expect an Alfa Romeo sports car to look like. So there's that. To me, it was always a little more technical, a little rougher than it maybe necessarily needed to be. It certainly lived up to the performance and capability that the brand's heritage would suggest it would have. But man, that was a rough car too. That was a rough car to drive.
So rough. I remember, I don't know, I spent an hour driving one back when they first were announced. And the thing that shocked me the most is how much I appreciate modern undercoating.
Yeah.
Because the 4C is all about lightweight. So anything that they didn't have to do to it, they didn't, and that includes undercoating. So when you drive over just a little bit of gravel and those sticky tires throw it up all over the place, as a mechanically sympathetic person, I feel like I'm hurting the thing. And it kind of makes me cringe a little bit as I hear all the gravel and little rocks tinging on the underbody of the car. But I mean, it's fine. You're not breaking anything, especially since it's mostly made of composites anyway. But yeah, it's this is what I think driving a Le Mans style race car would be like. It's you in some seats with a steering wheel and the engine behind your head. And if you're driving it like you're supposed to be driving it and wringing the engine out all the time, you basically need earplugs to drive the thing. It's the most visceral, raw car you can buy in America today. I think it's better off because of it, and it's super cool, but I also get why they barely sell any of them, because it would be such a difficult vehicle to have as your daily driver.
Yeah, I mean, you can barely drive it on the road, to be perfectly honest, because it's so challenging and you're so low to the ground. And to me, the steering was all over the place. It's light, but it also requires a lot of work, and it could be really heavy depending on what you were doing.
If you're driving slow, yeah.
So very challenging car. The gearbox, I believe it was dual clutch, right? Yeah, I think it's right. But I mean, that I never could quite get the shifts right with that. There was I don't know, it was a very challenging car to drive. Beautiful car, like I said, challenging in perhaps a good way, but again, not for everybody. I remember we had one up at Tech of the Year back in 14. I'm really going back. And I don't know what we were testing. If we were testing old raw technology of how it was current or what we were doing. It's probably the carbon fiber tub or something that we were trying to maybe we just wanted to drive an Alfa 4C. I don't know. But yeah, man, that thing was rough. I remember like it felt like the engine behind my ears was about to like rip me apart. But it's the kind of car that I'd love to drive if I had like maybe a country estate and I could like take it out on the road. It'd almost be like a workout for an hour, drive it throughout those challenging roads, and then put it away and get back in my Giulia or something, or Stelvio, and do it that way. And I actually did drive one. Here's a random story. Through downtown Manhattan one time. You were there.
I remember that, yeah.
We did that virtual reality 360 shoot thing at the Manhattan Car Club.
Yeah.
And they're like, what car do you want to drive? And I don't know what I was thinking. I'm like, give me the Alfa. And yeah, I remember to get back into the car club, I basically had to drive over the sidewalk. Like, I mean, good grief. That's a story to tell the grandkids about, I guess. But
yeah, I think that day I drove or rode an Indian Scout motorcycle through downtown Manhattan, right?
Yeah,
talk about two vehicles ill-suited to the task.
We were both trying to spend some of our 9 lives of the cats or something there. Like, let's do this. But I guess, the videos turned out good and, it's a good time, right?
Memories,
yeah. Well, memories, we'll leave it there. Memories, 'tis the season. We'll be back next week with one more podcast before 2020 is out. And we can leave it there. Jeremy, take care of yourself. Any plans for this weekend?
I have a hot tub coming on, so this is probably more information than any of our listeners cared for, but my 20-year wedding anniversary is coming up in January. Nice. And since we're still in the throes of a global pandemic, we won't be traveling anywhere. So instead of going on vacation, we are instead spending that money on a hot tub.
Sounds good.
That gets delivered on Monday, and I'm going to be prepping the area for it this weekend. Got to get like perfectly flat and get all the blocks and all that kind of good stuff down.
Now, does that go indoors or outdoors?
It's outdoors, but the way our house is set up, it's kind of in between a side porch and a back porch.
Nice.
So yeah, we won't have to travel very far in our bathing suits in the middle of December to get in and out of it.
Sounds good. Well, that is, instead of spending money on cars, spend money on some hot tubs. There we go. That's all the time we have this week. Everybody be safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.